August. Hopefully you're doing well. We're continuing on with our study. We're up to letter 20, Disturbance in the Nature of Man, from The Spiritual Life by St. Theophane the Recluse. And it's to me, a treasure trove of letters written by the saint in the 19th century to a young woman again in Moscow who was dealing with society at the time, which in many ways is not too different than the things we deal with today. Of course, there's always variation, but we've been dealing with sin issues since the very beginning, and each age believes it's appropriate and maybe common in the secular world to disassociate our actions with something that's considered sinful. And so I'm encouraged by St. Theophane in these letters to maybe give us a perspective, a snapshot. Again, that everything old is new again, and the issues that St. Theophane is dealing with, of course, aren't particular to the situations today, but in general, they cover them. So let's continue on with letter 20, Disturbance in the Nature of Man. I shall continue what exactly happened to us as a result of the transgressions of our forebears. Our nature remained the same, the parts and forces of our substance remained the same, with the same laws and needs. Our consciousness, however, did not freely set out in the same direction. The passions disturbed the mutual correlation of our parts and forces, and by violating their original order, introduced disorder into the overall activity and life of man, engendering from themselves a special class of destructive forces. These passions are not natural to us, but have such power as to control all of our forces as it suits them. That is what happened. God created man to be happy, namely in him, through living interaction with him. For this he breathed into our face the breath of his life, that is the Spirit, as has been mentioned already. The essential attributes of the Spirit are consciousness and freedom, while the essential movements of it are confession of God, the Creator, providence, and requitor, with a feeling of complete dependence upon him, a feeling that everything is expressed with a loving view toward God, an unceasing attention to him, and reverential fear before him, with a desire to create always that which is pleasing before him in accordance with the statutes of the conscience and the renunciation of everything, in order to taste the one God and to live and rejoice in him alone. Man has been given consciousness and freedom in the Spirit, not so that he may become conceited and do as he pleases, but so that, having acknowledged that everything he has is from God, he may live in God and freely and consciously head toward that one goal. When he is so disposed, and he abides in God, and God abides in him. When God abides in a man, he gives his Spirit the power to control the soul and body, and also everything that is outside of him. This was the original condition of man. God appeared to our forebears and confirmed all of this by his divine word, after ordering them to know him alone, to serve him alone, to walk in his will alone, so that they would not get confused when considering how to carry out all of this. He gave them a small commandment: do not taste of the fruit of one of the trees, which he called the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That is how our forebears began to live and to rejoice in paradise. A spirit which fell primarily because of pride envied them and knocked them from the path after inciting them to break the small commandment that was given them. He flatteringly suggested that by tasting the forbidden fruit, they would taste something so good that they just could not imagine. They would become like gods. They believed and they tasted. The matter of tasting, perhaps, is not significant. What is harmful in that they believed, without knowing who it was they believed? Perhaps even that would not have been so bad if the evil spirit had not poured such horribly offensive thoughts and feelings toward God into them, like poison. He convinced them that God forbid them to eat from the tree, because by doing so, they too would become gods. That is what they believed. Having believed this, they could not help but have blasphemous thoughts about God, such as the idea that he envied them
and treated them without benevolence.
Having accepted such thoughts, they could not avoid certain bad feelings toward him or self-willed decrees. We ourselves will take what thou dost not want to allow us to have. This is what he is like, and we thought he was so good. Well, we will just have to fix things up for ourselves in defiance of him. This is what was lodged into their hearts about God. Such thoughts and feelings were horribly blasphemous. It is these thoughts and feelings which signify the following away from God and the inimical rebellion against him. Something else also happened within them, which is ascribed to the evil spirit. I shall set my throne above the clouds, and I shall be equal to the Most High. This was not just an idle thought, but a hostile decree. Thus, by taking upon itself the arranging of its own lot, man's consciousness became conceited, and freedom became self-willing. The complete falling away from God was accomplished with a certain aversion and hostile revolt against him. It is for this reason that God abandoned such transgressors, and the living union was disrupted. God is everywhere and maintains everything, but he enters into free creatures only when they surrender themselves to him. When they are self-absorbed, he does not violate their self-rule. He continues to keep them and maintain them, but does not enter inside them. Thus our forebears were also left alone. If they had repented sooner, perhaps God would have returned to them. But they were stubborn, and even with obvious evidence, neither Adam nor Eve would acknowledge that they were guilty. Judgment followed, and with it the punishment of expulsion from paradise. Then they came to their senses, but it was too late. They had to bear the punishment laid upon them, as did our entire race after them. Thanks be to the all-merciful God, that although he turned from us, he did not discard us, and arranged a marvelous way for reunion with him. I have digressed a little far here. We must fix our attention on what happened within man. Indeed, the spirit had authority over the soul and body, because it was in living communion with God, and from him it received divine power. When the living communion with God was disrupted, the flow of divine power was also disrupted. The spirit, left by itself, was not able to rule the soul and body, but was drawn to and itself captured by them. The intellect ruled over man, and through the intellect, corporeality, and man became intellectual and carnal. Although the spirit was the same, it was without authority. It announces its existence at times through the fear of God, at other times through the alarms of the conscience, at other times still through the dissatisfaction with anything created. These manifestations are not paid any heed, but are merely taken into consideration. All care being turned to the arranging of one's life here, to which the intellect is assigned. A life more material, because life here is conducted with a body, and everything that is corporally tangible seems necessary. When this subversion of order and the interrelationships of the parts of our nature took place, man could no longer see things in their true perspective, and he could not keep his needs, desires, and feelings in their proper places. These needs, desires, and feelings were thrown into confusion, and disorder became their characteristic feature. But this condition, which is of course evil, would have been even tolerable if the passions had not otherwise entered and tyrannized man. Have you seen how wrath racks an angry man like a fever? How envy permeates someone who is envious until the poor man is green? How a mournful man is so consumed by grief that he is reduced to skin and bones? All the passions are like this. They entered inside us along with selfishness. As soon as our forebear inwardly uttered, I myself, selfishness took root inside him, this poison and this satanic seed. From this then developed the horde of passions: pride, envy, hatred, grief, despondency, greed, and sensuality, with all of their numerous and multifaceted consequences. Having become inbred, they agitate to an even greater degree of condition that was already perturbed without them. That is what the illness consists of. The spirit became conceited and self-willed. Because of this, it lost its authority and fell under the rule of the soul and body and everything outward. From this came the confusion of the intellectual, physical needs and desires, and especially the infinitude of such needs and desires. This infinitude is imparted to them by the Spirit from itself. In and of themselves, these needs are finite and not turbulent. The fact that they seethe without limit is because the Spirit rages in them, and the Spirit by nature has boundless energy. From this comes gluttony, drunkenness, avarice, and many other things to which man does not think to set a limit. But the main illness is the passions, the alien tyrants. Now you must make a simple induction. What is necessary for restoring everything in us back to its original order? I will write to you about this next time, and you think it over in the meantime. Well, again, I think every letter I read, it just, as I'm reading to you, and I've read this before, it just has me thinking about myself, about our situation, our humanity, our sinfulness, and the struggles that we have. So I'm hopeful that St. Theophane's words are meaningful to you and as you're going through your own struggles. And so I'll talk to you on the next Orthodox Gardener.